Congressman Krishnamoorthi of Illinois, member of the House Oversight and of the Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. So many of these stories sort of coming to a head between the Judiciary Committee report and the January 6th work. I wonder if I could just get your views on what Congressman Kinzinger is saying there, that they're preferred to refer contempt.
He's right, Nicole. I think that anybody who refuses to comply with a valid subpoena is subject to jail time and fines under a criminal statute called 2 U.S.C. Section 192. And it's very clear that this particular statute authorizes the DOJ to go after any witness, such as Steve Bannon, for instance, who refuses to come before the committee. And unlike during the Trump years when we couldn't use that statute because the Trump administration wouldn't enforce it, I think this time around the Biden administration, I'm hopeful, would be willing to enforce it.
When you hear Steve Scalise refuse to acknowledge the legitimacy of President Joe Biden in an election that returned him to the Congress, and you don't hear Steve Scalise suggest that every House Republican who was returned on the same ballots they now allege were fraudulent and phony or not valid, what do you make of the fact that so many Republicans buy what Steve Scalise is selling?
It's deeply disturbing, and I know Minority Whip Scalise knows what he's doing. He's trying to have his cake and eat it, too. On the one hand, you're absolutely right. Those Republicans that were elected in a lot of these states that they contested are a vital part of his, minority, and he's obviously trying to create a majority with them. But at the same time, he wants to question the election. And that is part of this disturbing narrative that the GOP is weaving. And unfortunately, it's gaining traction within the party.
What do we do?
Well, I think we have to do the right thing, first of all. I think that's why the Select Committee has to expose the truth. I will say that a recent poll did show that still there's a majority of Americans who want to know what the truth is of January 6th. I think we're just racing against the clock, Nicole, because we have to make sure that we get the truth out on the table in the form of documents and testimony, certainly during this Congress. I think, secondly, we obviously have to hold accountable those Republicans who would have subscribed to the notion of the big lie that Donald Trump actually won the election and Joe Biden did not. And secondly, that Donald Trump had nothing to do with January 6th, but rather Antifa did. And that the people, the insurrectionists who appeared were mere tourists, as some of my colleagues have said. Those are kooky ideas. And I think that we have to make sure that we message on them properly and hold those people who would believe in them to account in the upcoming elections.
I want to follow up with you after I show you something that Congressman Raskin said about enforcing the subpoenas, because it's my sense that folks like Steve Bannon just don't think that Congress is serious. When you look at how much Trump got away with and his inner circle, never held accountable for anything, it makes sense that they would try what they were trying. I want to show you what Congressman Raskin said and ask if you think that the January 6th investigation will be sort of a dividing line.
There was an attack on the U.S. government, on the U.S. Congress. More than 140 of our officers were wounded or injured in this violent insurrection, which delayed the counting of presidential electoral votes for the first time in American history. So it could not be a graver issue. And none of these people have any arguments. Steve Bannon had been fired from the executive branch of government back in 2017. He wasn't working for the executive branch. So even if you assume hypothetically that Donald Trump has some kind of executive privilege, which is extremely dubious in itself, how could that extend to Steve Bannon? So he's completely exposed. Remember, Susan McDougal spent 18 months in jail because she refused to participate in the Whitewater investigation when she was under subpoena. Does the law only apply against Democrats? I don't think so. The law applies to everybody, including former presidents and including friends of former presidents who are facilitating the incitement of violent insurrection against the union.
And Congressman Steve Bannon, I believe, was also charged with crimes for which he was pardoned by Donald Trump. So I wonder if you're confident that this will be where the rubber meets the road, if the subpoenas for Steve Bannon should be enforced, and if not, that he'll be referred for criminal contempt.
I respectfully believe they should be. They must be. And I think that the referral to the DOJ and the U.S. Attorney's Office will help to move the process much more swiftly along than any process that we used during the Trump administration years. I'd just like to piggyback off of something that Congressman Raskin said as well, which is that I think that in this particular case, I still believe the vast majority of the American people want to know the truth of what happened that day. And to that end, I think that the fact that we do have Republicans on the special committee is going to help us in bolstering the case for enforcing these subpoenas and getting at that truth and exposing it. It's that important.
I agree. I mean, I think when people see Congressman Kinzinger and then someone named Cheney on the committee, it certainly has its bipartisan nature conveyed. Congressman, thank you so much for spending some time with us on a holiday. We're grateful.